Though 2024 has been a so-so year for horror films at the box office, as it has been for basically all genres admittedly, in terms of sheer quality, the first half of the year hasn't left genre fans wanting for top-notch fare. Whether you were in the market for a glossy big-screen multiplex horror flick or a more artful deep-dish exercise in suspense, 2024 has had you covered so far, and it's showing no signs of slowing down for the rest of the year. And so, by poring back over the dozens of horror movies released this year so far, it's time to separate the wheat from the chaff and break down the 10 best films you absolutely positively cannot miss. From unexpectedly brilliant franchise prequels nobody asked for, to glorious creature features, low-key indie chillers, and everything else in between. These are the horror movies that have ruled 2024 thus far, and which you definitely need to see. If the rest of the year can match the output of the first 6 months, then 2024 may very well be a banner year for the genre, no matter the box office numbers. With that in mind, I'm Sean Ferrick for What Culture Horror, and here are the 10 best horror movies of 2024 so far. Number 10, The First Omen. It's not unfair to say that expectations were basically through the floor for this prequel to The Omen that not a single solitary soul actually asked for. And yet, what a pleasant surprise it was that director Arkasha Stevenson turned in the series' finest effort since, arguably, the 1976 original. Okay, it may not be the highest of bars, though the basic narrative beats aren't anything new. Stevenson's richly atmospheric filmmaking combines with a mesmerizing performance from the great Mel Tiger Free, who was in Servant and of course Game of Thrones, to make The First Omen a rare horror prequel that truly justifies its existence. Packed with haunting and occasionally nauseating imagery, while building uneasy suspense even though the ultimate outcome is unavoidably known, there is proof perfect that gripping stories can still exist within this franchise's seemingly tired framework. One thing's for sure, Stevenson's outstanding work behind the camera, in her feature debut no less, has made her an immediate talent to watch. Expect big things. Number 9, Sting. As this list will prove, it's been quite the year for movies about giant, deadly spiders. And first up we have Sting, in which an extraterrestrial spider crash lands on Earth and terrorizes the residents of a New York City apartment building as it begins growing in size. Though undeniably constrained by its low budget, Sting's charming fusion of practical and digital effects ensures it serves as a knowing homage to classic creature features, aided by a claustrophobic setting and solid cast of characters. Arachnophobes be warned, there are a few sequences in this film sure to leave you watching through splayed fingers, if not just leaving the room outright, and I speak from personal experience here. While an undeniably meat and potatoes genre offering, Sting makes the best of its confined locale to prove what can be achieved with little money when skilled filmmakers are involved. It's not the best killer spider movie on this list, but it is a whole lot of B-movie inspired fun. Number 8, Lisa Frankenstein. Though it released to mixed reviews from critics and flopped at the box office, Lisa Frankenstein already feels destined to enjoy a Jennifer's Body-esque re-evaluation in a few years. Hell, it's already amassed a cult of unapologetic fans. Penned by Juno scribe Diablo Cody and directed by Zelda Williams, daughter of Robin, Lisa Frankenstein is a loving throwback to classic dark comedies like Heathers and, perhaps most overtly, Edward Scissorhands. Katherine Newton is a gonzo blast as a teenage girl who embarks on a dubious romance with a Victorian-era man, played by Cole Sprouse. She inadvertently resurrects from the grave, in what's nothing if not an intoxicatingly chaotic and stylish genre mashup. The lack of an R rating and willfully genre-hopping approach might deter some, but for more adventurous horror fans willing to take the plunge, this John Hughes spiced slice of horror comedy is quite the ticket. Get ahead of the inevitable think pieces sure to sing this one's praises in about a decade, and feast your eyes on it like right now. Number 7, Arcadian. If the phrase Nicolas Cage horror film gets you immediately excited, it's worth pointing out up front that Arcadian is not some bonkers odyssey in the vein of the brilliant Mandy. This post-apocalyptic horror lands in an altogether more sedate, if still richly effective, register, as Cage plays a father of 2 teenage boys who attempts to protect them from the monsters which descend upon their farmhouse at night. What it clearly lacks in an epic budget, Arcadian more than compensates with its disquieting unease, bleakly beautiful Irish shooting location, and a trio of strong performances from Cage, Jaden Martell, and Maxwell Jenkins. Add to this uniquely unsettling monster design, and one apparently inspired by Goofy of all things, and Arcadian delivers a respectfully low-key entry into the end-of-the-world horror, even if some might find it a touch too slight for its own good. That is to say, don't expect any classically unhinged Nick Cage freakouts here, because this isn't that kind of movie. Number 6, Stop Motion. The feature debut from stop-motion animation filmmaker Robert Morgan, Stop Motion is one of the most visually distinctive horror films of the year so far, starring the great Aisling Franciosi, the Nightingale, as a stop-motion animator who begins to blur the line between her latest film project and her actual life. Easy viewed as a metaphor for the painstaking, even torturous nature of stop-motion filmmaking itself, stop-motion is a gorgeous fusion of live action and animation, the uncanny stop-motion footage lending the film a brilliantly uncanny quality when integrated with the conventional film materials. Franciosi is meanwhile unsurprisingly brilliant in the lead role, and while the particulars of its trauma-infused narrative aren't super original, the means through which the film contextualizes them certainly makes them feel fresh. Pair this with some sublime sound design and a suffocatingly thick atmosphere, and this is one hell of a calling card for one of the most creative voices in the genre to emerge in quite some time. Number 5. Immaculate. Just when it seemed like religious-themed horror flicks had nothing new left to offer audiences, along came Immaculate to prove us all quite wrong. The moment-to-moment details of its plot may be relatively familiar, yes, but between Michael Mohan's taut filmmaking and Sydney Sweeney's superb performance as a young novice who finds herself terrorized inside an Italian convent, this is a suitably creepy and distinctive entry into the tired subgenre. If the artsy visuals might initially imply a restrained, gore-free time at the movies, fear not, this thing has a few shocking moments of brutality up its sleeve, and a climax in particular that's basically impossible to forget. If you still had any lingering doubts about Sweeney's acting chops going into this, a certain single-take sequence later in the film should obliterate it entirely. Any card-carrying horror fan has seen their fair share of Catholic horror flicks, precious few that go this damn hard. Number 4. You'll Never Find Me. If the setup might sound familiar enough, of a man granting shelter to a mysterious woman who knocks on his door on a stormy night, You'll Never Find Me's through line is anything but. Rather than deign to the most crusty genre tropes, filmmakers Indiana Bell and Josiah Allen mine maximum discomfort from the ambiguity of the situation, as audiences are left to ponder which of these two individuals is actually the one to be wary of. Despite the limitations of largely taking place in a single location with just two characters, the film remains compulsively compelling thanks to its tight, suspenseful script and stellar performances from both Brendan Rock and Jordan Cowan. There are better films to watch if you're after a fast-paced thrill ride, but if you're willing to let the sheer atmosphere of the scenario wash over you, this is an extremely sharp and memorable debut, one that again proves the power of thoughtful writing over big budgets. Number 3. Exuma. South Korean horror has been on an absolute tear for a good while, and Jang Jae-hyun, Svaha, the Sixth Finger, Exuma, is the latest among them to command your attention. Excavating a grave rarely has a fortuitous outcome in this of all genres, and so it's little surprise that digging up a mysterious mountainous gravesite has dire consequences for all those involved. Comparisons to 2016's The Wailing are basically unavoidable given Exuma's similarity in style, tone, pacing, and subject matter, and while not reaching that film's mesmerizing heights, this is still a brilliantly dread-infused, regularly unexpected slice of East Asian folk horror, nimbly splicing its gut-wrenching intensity with moments of levity while benefiting from the efforts of a top-drawer cast, including the great Choi Min-sik. It is easy to see why Exuma became an utter box office smash in its native land, even if it hasn't become more mainstream breakout internationally. Number 2. Infested. The better of the two spider-centric horrors on this list, Infested is a terrifically crafted creature feature that unfolds in a French apartment building that becomes overrun with a fleet of deadly, fast-growing, ever-reproducing spiders. Again, arachnophobes might want to consider giving this one a wide berth. In his extremely impressive directorial debut, director Sebastian Vanacek does a fantastic job exploiting the heightened scenario for maximum suspense, enough that it's easy to see why he was recently hired to direct the next Evil Dead film. But more than a mere assemblage of taut set pieces featuring everyone's least favourite eight-legged freaks, Infested also dares to take itself relatively seriously, rather than using B-movie camp as a mere crutch. In that stead, it also invests the audience in its characters and its setting enough that when the bodies start piling up, you might even feel something. Number 1, Late Night with the Devil. And finally, the most buzzed about horror film of 2024 to date is also the best, as Late Night with the Devil is a rarest of horrors to live up to all of the foaming festival hype. Clearly inspired by the legendary 1992 horror mockumentary Ghostwatch, Colin and Cameron Cairns' film perfectly captures the aesthetic of the 1970s late-night talk shows while offering a deeply twisted riff on the seemingly played-out found-footage subgenre. David Dastmalchian, who has been killing it in supporting roles in huge movies for a few years now, finally gets a meaty leading role and absolutely knocks it out of the park as a troubled talk show host who invites an apparently possessed girl, played by Ingrid Torelli, onto his show. Though we know the outcome isn't going to be good, the smart writing and excellent ensemble cast ensure this wild ride zips nimbly by inside of a tight 93 minutes.